Take a little time to just breathe into your body and see how it wants to move right now. I want you to especially notice if there are things that one side wants to do that maybe the other one doesn't. Always excited to see everyone and talk. So welcome all of you. And because we're the ones who are here on time, I'd love it if you could just unmute yourselves and tell me how you're feeling, or if you have anything you'd love to come away from class with today.
Feeling still full.
Yeah. Let's go with that for a second. How does that express itself in your body?
A little lack of connection through the core.
So I kind of planned class for those of us who are feeling full, because there's an opportunity for learning there. When I started really working on my own breathwork, the core breathwork stuff, it was when I was pregnant with my second child. And I was always utilizing that filled up feeling as a way of creating space and moving around. You know, it's not that different, if you think about it, than when we provide feedback in any way to the outside of our body through resistance or also through displacement. You know, so for example, when you've got a yoga block and say you have someone like standing on it and they feel the pressure, right? They become more aware immediately of the work on this leg, not just because there's a difference in height, but also because of this tactile sensation, and simply because there's displacement on that side of the body. You could put a ball, you don't necessarily need a yoga block right now, I was just giving an example, but if you want to try it, and feel free, you can put a ball on some part of the body, even something as simple as putting a washcloth under one side of the pelvis will, and this is a fun thing you should do on your own, but also, Julie, this relates to pelvic floor awareness. We're not going to do it in this class, but note for later that if you take a washcloth, not even fold it up, and put it underneath one side of your sit bone, and you just sit there and then do whatever for about a minute or two, when you come off of that, your pelvis will feel substantially different just because of that small shift. So back to what I'm talking about with having had a meal and having a new opportunity to work around even more substance in our system, it's a great way to experience new ways to create space. I'm welcoming everyone else coming in kind of en masse right now. It's really great to see you populate the screen, and I think we're just going to get into practicing. Before we start, I had asked everyone to have a TheraBand. I'm going to go ahead and assume everyone has one. It doesn't have to be super big. If it is, we can get fancier, but I actually just chose to take a smaller one in case anyone new didn't have my massive lengths that I recommend. There are two other things that I would like you to have on hand. I want you to have a glass of water, and I want you to have something you can blow your nose or cough into. It's pretty normal when you start working with your breath that your sinuses will start to clear, or that stuff that was living in your lungs, maybe like camping out in some dusty hallway, all of a sudden realizes it has to leave. So I want you to empower yourselves now to do that. And I'm also going to make a mental note that I will mute my microphone whenever I have to cough or blow my nose, so you don't have to be privy to my internal workings. And once you're set, I invite you to just come into any comfortably seated position. If you like being symmetrical, you can pay attention to that. If you find that you have a natural way of sitting that's a little different, you're welcome to sit that way for the moment. And we're going to take about 20 breaths that have a 5.5 second inhale and a 5.5 second exhale. I've recently learned that that's the optimal way for our bodies to breathe. I dislike any type of judgment scale and things like that, but there's some good reasons behind it. And so 20 breaths is going to give us about 4 minutes of just very even breathing. So I have a clock here I can hear. I'm just going to give it a little tap. So that was the second counting, and we're just going to breathe in for about 6 of these, and then out for 6 of these. I'd like you to close your noses and let this happen through the top of, or to close your mouth, and let this happen through the top of your mouth, the roof of the mouth, and the nose. And as you do this, just notice what parts of your body are pulled into the movement, how your shape changes. Now it's very easy as you start to observe breath or movement to begin to slow it down as it gets bigger and bigger. And I'm asking you not to do that right now. So instead you may find that more muscles become alert as we actually try to contain the breath in different ways. When you start to get playful with it, sending it to one part of the body or another, even better. It's like you'll start to bounce a ball in center, but inevitably you start to give yourself more projects. Mojo, cut it out. Hey, back. Let's have 3 more. And this last one, keep inhaling. Push your hands up. When you hit the apex, hold it and let that begin to wiggle you. What happens if you kind of push that side to side? Can you push out to make a little more space? What happens if you flex or extend? And when you finally have to exhale, hiss the breath out. Try to keep your arms reaching out. Keep pushing with your legs as you feel yourself deflate inside. And when your head starts to pull down, push the top of your head up to resist that. Finally, when all the breath is out, release your limbs down. Maybe you'll feel a little dripping in the tissue. And then inhale yourself back up. Take your time this time and notice what fills up next and next and next. At the top, just gently rotate a few times. And then bring your head on center, keep rotating. And then keep your shoulders straight, keep rotating. Your ribs can move, but not your shoulders. And then keep your ribs straight, not your tummy rotate. However that's working, behind or in front of your food. There's muscles all around it, it's all good. And then keep your stomach stable, just rotate your pelvis underneath. You might notice that the thighs, your butt, your knees, and your ankles do a fun dance. Now start to push through that. And we're just going to slowly stack this rotation back up through the spine in whatever way makes sense. And you might notice that the way that makes sense to you isn't particularly linear. That's cool. Once you start getting the rotation going all the way around, go ahead and just float through that so you can let it even turn into more like a backwards crawl motion. And then we're going to inhale up, take the arms up one last time. Push and stretch and swallow. And then slowly begin to exhale, sighing the breath out. See if you can feel your diaphragm begin to rise up as it relaxes. Again, let the spine hover over the systems that give you life. Take the hands down and start to push the hands down the legs, letting your head hang. I want you to find the place where your limbs are bearing into you to support your spine like a tent-like parachute. Open your mouth. I want to start to breathe in and out of the mouth, trying to inflate the dome of the back of us. This last exhalation, we're going to hold out. Keep trying to exhale, pushing. And when you find stillness, stay there as long as you can. And then inhaling. And notice if there's any different work underneath your sit bones now as you come back up. Exhale to center. We're going to move around a little bit. So I invite you to come behind your stools now. And just put your hands in the front. So if you're using a gyrotonic stool or a square stool, and we've been taught that we want to sit in the corner, now we're going to flip it, and we're just going to keep it horizontal. Use it like this. And I want you to knead the floor out to stretch the back of the legs, just to feel the stretch through the sole of the feet and the Achilles, and see if you can get that to also go through the hamstring. And so how would you push your hips back to stretch the whole posterior chain of the lower half of the body? Do that a couple of times. And then bend both knees and send your sit bones slightly back. It's like you're pushing the headlights of your butt backwards to the wall. And take the tail back too to open the pelvic floor. Take a breath here. And then rock that shape forward until your hands get a stretch. Push through the heels of the palms. Push through the baby fingers and the thumbs, and then the heads of all the fingers, and notice how that makes your neck and your shoulders react. And take a breath here. And then let's just begin to undulate the spine. Not necessarily making ourselves start from the bottom to the top, but just feeling what's moving most right now. And allowing this natural weight shift to help us experience the movement. So I took a walk yesterday before the meal, and my dad had just been visiting, and he's nearly 80, and I had a big long conversation with him and his wife about the helpfulness of using resistance when we train. And I realized the analogy I should have used with my dad is that resistance is a tool we use for muscular comprehension, like language is a tool we use for mental comprehension. Resistance is a way to emphasize movement for our muscles to help them understand more. And when we repeat the same movement over and over with resistance, we allow for greater comprehension. Just like when you write an essay, you explore one concept from different sides and more in depth. So when you use your body weight as a tool for resistance, what you're doing is you're using yourself to comprehend yourself, which is what we're doing now, as we're just undulating the spine and noticing that as we repeat something, it grows and it changes. So I'd like you to see how far you can let this movement grow now without directing it into any particular shape. Next movement project, I want you to just walk around the stool as much as you can to one side until you hit the end point of what feels good. Then come back and walk around to the other side. And please play with how much weight you give your legs and how much weight you give your hands. And when you happen upon a curiously good stretch, by all means, please stay there, or at least try to figure out how to recreate it on the other side, or as you return to the same side with a slightly different body, because it's smarter and more agile every time. One more time. And then come up. Stand in front of your stools, stretch up, push your hands up. Hold your breath in and rotate your pelvis 2 times in each direction. And then exhale out and rotate your pelvis twice in each direction. Inhale out. And we'll come back down to stools. So now I wanted to do a little bit of breath play. This is when we get our TheraBands. And what I've done is I've taken a standard length TheraBand, I've tied it in a loop. So it's about this wide. Some people here are doing metric, some people here are not. So it's about my, thinner than my shoulders wide. And once we have it tied, we're going to put it around our shoulders like a cowl. At some point, I should add to my liability waiver that you may lose hair in my classes. I'm just going to assume you know that and you've consented to that, or you tied your hair back. So once we get it, just around the bottom of our shoulders like this, notice it's giving you a little more information about how your upper body is. And can you feel more now the weight of your upper body on your pelvis? And can you let that, how to say that? Can you allow that information to help you find more awareness of the central tendon of your diaphragm, which is located in the middle of the diaphragm, being located around this central place on your pelvic floor. Usually looking for center teaches us a lot about what's going on that's different on both sides. So when you get distracted by that information, that's cool, that's actually why we're doing this. Let's go back to our 5.5 second breathing and take, say, 4 breaths, just looking at the alignment of center and how our body naturally moves into that. When you find your centers, try to keep them organized on top of each other so you feel how the muscles organize breath around this isometric hold. Okay, now breathing on your own time, I'd like you to inhale and push your sternum into the TheraBand with the breath. Take as much time as you want and feel the internal shape of your body react to this desire. And you exhale, park yourself back in center. Next breath, we'll breathe into the back of the TheraBand. We're going to repeat this front and back alternation twice more. And I'd like you to notice if you're actually expanding most first into the TheraBand, or if different parts of your body want to go front and back before that. Hi, Naima, I'm teaching a class. Want to come over to this now? That's fine. But maybe the living room. Come on, guys, back inside. Weezy, open the front door for her. All right, you gotta move out or? To assume that was 3 breaths for you and a playmate for my daughter. Now, let's see if we can keep the TheraBand squeezing us slightly tight on the top, and let's breathe along the length of our spine. We're going to take 3 breaths of 5.5 seconds each here. I'd like you to notice if you tend to fill up more from the bottom or more from the top first, or if it's somewhere in the middle. Now, allowing yourselves to slow down and pay attention, please alternate between filling yourselves up from the bottom and then returning back down to the bottom, and then filling yourselves up from the top and then exhaling the air back up to the top. We'll alternate that twice, taking the time you need. Also noticing if one or the other asks you to take more time. If you ever need to take a few breaths in between, please do. You don't need to stress out or overload your systems by pushing more and more into some timing that doesn't work for you. In fact, I don't recommend it. Use these as exercises to enhance your capability, but not stress it out, right? Your respiratory system, the systems that give you life, aren't ones that are necessarily strengthened by overstress. They are strengthened through curiosity and exploration that feels safe. I'm going to let this last exhalation mark the end of that exercise. Now, take your hands to your knees and just lightly press your arms, the top of your arm bones, out into that TheraBand so you create some resistance. It's going to be like an internal feeling of stretching that allows everything to brace at about 35%. We're going to breathe in cross pattern. So we're going to go breathing up and down, and then breathing down and up, and then breathing right and in, and then breathing left and in, on your own time, twice through. See if when you breathe the sides, you can inflate the front and back of the TheraBand on that side. So we're noticing how both the front and back of our rib cage inflate as we send breath more to one lung or the other. When you're done that exhalation, when you finish this, come out of your TheraBand. Take it in between your wrists and hold it with your palms. We're going to finish this breathing focus with a 20-second hold of inhalation. So we'll inhale our hands all the way up, slightly pull the TheraBand apart, hold for 20 seconds, and slowly hiss the air out, letting the exhalation begin to pull the inside of our bodies back down first. After which, we're going to take a quick bio break. When you've come down from this, please take a minute for yourselves. Drink water, expel water, blow your noses, do what you need to do. We've got 60 seconds, then we're coming back together for a little more movement. I realize that for some of us, we need longer than 60 seconds, but I figure that's why you get a recording. And I want to share as much movement as possible too. So I've been playing with this concept of creating curls through proprioception. And I'd like you to just start with bringing your right hand to your right shoulder. Now, if that's difficult for you, you can use your left hand. For some reasons, I do like to have the same hand or shoulder, but just kind of feel the head of the shoulder. Dig your fingers into it, and imagine that your fingers were eyeballs, that you just set a bunch of eyes on your shoulder. And I'd like you to start to peer your shoulder down over to see what your hip is doing. And then bring it back up. And just do that a few times. Once you have that sense of eyeballs on your shoulder, you can go ahead and release the hand if you want. And it's not that you can't use the ribs. In fact, you can. You can also use your head, but I want you to notice when parts of your limbs are helping the eyes on your shoulder see your hip. Like they're really curious about what your hip is doing. And this time as we go down, let's scan the inside of the hip with the shoulder and then the outside of the hip with the shoulder. It's like it's got antenna there. And then come back up. And now let's let that right shoulder check out what the left hip is doing. So it's going to peer first, and then it's going to take the rest of our body down with it, depending on how compelling that left hip is. And let's say it's pretty darn compelling. Scan the inside and the outside of the hip. And then check out what your left waist is doing a few times. And then can your right shoulder check out what your left shoulder is doing? And then bring it back. Let it come back home. And then just come to center. And just to compare movement, let's rotate a couple of times to the right and the left, seeing if anything feels different on both sides of our body. And come back to center. Finger eyeballs, left shoulder. Place them on. Make sure they're really big eyes, like the ones that you would see in like Nightmare Before Christmas kind of characters. It's Tim Burton, those illustrations. So there we have our eyeballs. Maybe using your fingers a couple of times to look at the left hip, peering down. We don't need to expect it's going to feel the same. We want to see how we do it. And by seeing how we do it, we'll probably find ways of making it feel equally satisfying. When you feel like the imprint of your eyeballs on your shoulder is inarguable, undeniable, then you can start to take the shoulder without the hand. And this time, look over, peer, see the hip with your shoulder, and then scan the inside and the outside of your hip bone. And then we'll proceed to investigate the right hip bone with the left shoulder, leading from the shoulder and allowing the rest of the body to follow. What I'm seeing right now is how my dog pulls on the leash and insists he knows the way that we want to go when we take a walk. So it's the same thing with the shoulder. It's insisting it's going to go that way, and the rest of the body is basically compliant. Scan the inside and the outside of the hip bone with that shoulder. And then scan your right waist. scan over to the bottom of the ribs. Every so often, do return yourself back home. And then can you see the other shoulder? And let's take our hands to the back of the head. And let's press our head up into our fingertips until we feel all the back muscles of our arms begin to respond. So I'm not letting my head push my shoulders back. I'm resisting. I'm pushing the arms back against my skull. And I'm using that resistance to clarify my upper body's understanding of its muscles. And then let's go ahead and make some semicircles, initiating from our very, very curious shoulders. So we're just going to round to the front, but we are going to notice where the sense of completion lies as we go to the side. And then press the hem of the hands, come up, bring the hands back down. And a few times, let's let our right shoulder see back to our right butt. It's going to lead, but it's probably going to take some back muscles with it, and maybe our butt might even lift a little bit so it says hello back to the back of our shoulder. And then can we take our right shoulder to our left butt? Just a couple, because now you see what I'm getting at. And then at the back of the left ribs. And what if it says hi to the other deltoid, but it's trying to see the left? And then come back, find center. Let's take a long breath through the spine. Just feeling that carousel inside of you. And then we'll do the other side. Left shoulder gets curious, wants to check out the top of your left butt. And how does it bring that chain of willing muscles with it? And then can it see the right butt? Can it see the top of the right hip? Keep on scanning that little sundial up to the right side of the body. And this movement doesn't have to come with pain or a sense of cramping behind yourself. If it is, see if you can take your left shoulder more around a corner before it goes. Right? Maybe you didn't have to make that 90-degree turn. And then once you've finished, take your hands back to your head and let's make some semicircles backwards, looking for the sense of completion as we arrive at the sides. Come to the center. If you have a square stool, please turn it back so that it's horizontal. And take ourselves down now. And I'm just going to turn sideways to you. So what we're doing is we're going to rest our ribs and possibly our head, depending on the size of our stool, on the stool. If not, you can just rest your head into your hands here. And I'm just thinking if we want to have the TheraBands around our knees, and it seems pretty insistent, this energetic class seems pretty insistent we do. So come up for a moment and please take your TheraBand loops, bring them down around the top of your shins underneath the knee joint. You can use your stools for that. Getting yourselves back down, supporting your ribcage on the chair in a way that feels good for you. And if this doesn't feel good, then please find a different way to do it, maybe sitting up or maybe even with your body up against a wall and your hips free. So I'm just looking, it seems like everyone's pretty good on the stools here. Press your knees out. And now let's start by just dropping the tailbone down. Take a long breath and notice that if you push your head into your hands, your spine feels stable. Your shoulders don't have to be super open. Your elbows can be up to the sky. They can be as wide as they like. And then let's let our right hip bone get curious. And let's see if the right hip bone can come up to see what our right armpit is doing. Just do that a few times. How does the right hip find the armpit? And then how does the right hip find the left armpit? And then how does the right hip find the left hip? Rest the hips down center, relax your head. Take a long breath through your spine and make any adjustments you want. And then bring the hips back up and repeat that with the left side. First of all, left hip finding left armpit. And then finding the right. And then finding the right hip. And then let's make 4 circles in each direction from our curious hip bones. Maybe they also want to see the sides of the waist they live on, right? Let's not entirely neglect our external obliques. Take the time you want for this and notice how your body's movement is pulling breath into you. Relax at the end. See if your arms can rest out. See if your head can be supported. Just try to straighten your legs to lift your hips a few times. And bend your knees, let them go wide to drop the hips down. So my body enjoys tipping my stool. If that feels safe for you, then go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, please don't. And on your own, try this on balls and other things of other heights. And then to come out, let's just walk our hips down, take our hands around, and come back up. Let's take the hands to above our knees for a moment. Take our legs wide and bend the knees. Take your hands to your thighs. You're going to inhale into your butt. As you do that, feel the pelvis, the lower half of the lumbar expand. And then exhale, keep the reach. And I want you to notice the feeling and the shape of the internal abdominals here. They may be much further in than usual. As we're sending breath to expand the skin in the back of our bodies, the front of our body has responded, and it's helping us to breathe behind everything. Now, this last time, we're going to do a dry breath here. We're going to flex and extend our pelvis backwards. So I'll demonstrate this one time for you. If you've been doing my videos and you know what dry breathing is, please, by all means, jump in and experiment. So here's the concept. We're going to inhale. I'm going to keep pressing my legs out. So I've engaged my adductors and my glute med for this. The stability in the back of the pelvis and the outside of it is really important. I'm going to exhale. And then I'm going to start to take my pelvis back and forth. I'm going to do that as many times as I can until I have to inhale. Then I'm going to inhale easily and take 1 or 2 easy breaths and then repeat that. We're going to do that 4 times. When you find things that feel really good, go into it. If there's an area that makes you nervous or causes you pain, go close to it but not into it and practice going in and out of that place to familiarize yourself with your path. On your own time, 4 times. Let your hips stay curious. Inhale, stand up. And then exhale, come back. Let's come back out of the TheraBands and sitting on our stools in the ways that we are comfortable sitting on stools. We're going to do the same thing now with our ribs, lifting our ribs up away from our hips with the dry breath. Let's just do it twice so we have time to play with other things. Take the time you need. Okay. I feel like we still want 2 more here, but I want to give us more projects about it. So, for the next 2 dry breaths with the upper body, let's motivate 1 from the right shoulder, peering around our body, and then 1 from the left. Let's see what happens. Good things happen. And let's just make some rib cage circles. Say 4 in each direction, letting breath flow in and out of you like a river. Not an angry ocean, just a river. Then we're going to repeat this with curious hips. Let your hips desire to see the world in order to move your upper body around. Class. So we're going to end with my favorite piece of the gyrokinesis program, which is the long wave combination, and we'll do a simple long wave combination. If you are not a gyro head, it's very simple to understand. I'll demonstrate one time quickly. You undulate forward, we call this a wave, arching down, curling up. And you reverse that, going down and coming up. You do that twice in the center. Then you repeat the same pattern over each leg one time. And so we usually just guide with our hands there to orient the navel. And then after that, you bring your legs closer together and you're going to use the bottom arm to create a connection. Curious shoulder, curious hip. To exhale down, you're going to inhale and spread your chest through that. Exhale back down, inhale, come up. Other side. And you do that twice. So it's got a nice rhythm to it. I'd like us to do it with our therabands around our knees. We're going to take it slow. We'll repeat it at least twice, but maybe 4 times, depending on class energy. And I would like you to experiment with your dry breathing here. See where you can create lifts and spaciousness inside, using this exercise as a way of thoroughly investigating all the different shapes we can make with the inside of our bodies. With the TheraBand, you can grab it whenever you want. So just to familiarize you with that, I got the TheraBand beneath my knees. I'm going to grab the center. Let's all do that. Now push your feet down, and then take your body back and pull your arms out. All right, feel that. Feel the ability to contract your muscles a little more firmly to create shapes. And then you can also round your back, and you can push the TheraBand out, or you can hang back on it. When you're doing the sideways stuff, you can actually grab one side of it outside the knee and the other inside to take your hands around in different ways. Right? Or you can take both hands on the inside and push and pull. So just play with that. And know that that band is yours. It's always yours. And you can come back and try things you didn't get to today later. All right, let's go. Inhale up. And from here, we're just going to arch forward. I'm going to try not to cue your breath because I want you to find the places where you exhale and keep the air out. It's 2 undulations in center. And then to one side, and then the other. And then 4 times, leveraging into a twist. Curious shoulder, curious hip. And then inhale, let's let the top shoulder be curious. Let it try to see your bottom butt. Go on the other side. Then exhale. Other side. And repeat that. Repeating from the top. A little faster. Sides. And come up. Slip out the band. Stand up. Let's just have 5 more rounds of 5.5 second breathing. Try to keep your tailbone reaching down through the inside of your heels. All right, so it's plunging to the core of the earth and actually connecting you like a grounding cord. And then allow the breath to form around that stable base. So your hips are able to see up and down. Their peripheral vision is the front of your body. Start taking the breath more up into the top of the sternum and the hollow of your collarbone while keeping the tailbone oriented. 2 more breaths. And relax. So that was class. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes if anyone has any feedback or questions. And if you don't and you have a few minutes and you want to just lie down and let your body assimilate that, you'll reap huge benefits if you give yourselves a little bit of time of quiet after this kind of movement.